Every single case that rewrites a public figure's legacy has one moment, one pivot point, one name that nobody saw coming that walks through a door and changes absolutely everything. I have spent weeks building a theory about the Duggar case, specifically about Joseph and Kendra, and what I am about to share with you is the one angle that nobody in this community has seriously explored yet. There is a witness out there, and when that name surfaces, everything you thought you understood about this story is going to snap into a completely different shape. Stay with me, because I am going to make you earn this reveal. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell so you don't miss a single update, because this channel covers the Duggar world deeper than anywhere else on YouTube. And if this theory lands the way I think it will, you are going to want to be in this community when the truth finally comes out. Now, let's build this properly, because the foundation matters as much as the theory itself. When we talk about family legal proceedings, whether that is divorce, custody, or any restructuring of a family unit following a criminal case, most people picture two sides, two attorneys, and a set of facts that both sides already know. And that is exactly where most people get it wrong. Family court proceedings and the legal ecosystem that surrounds high-profile family cases operate on a completely different logic than what most of us imagine. The witness pool in these situations is not limited to the people you would think of first. It is not just siblings. It is not just close friends. It is not just the obvious names that have been circling in comment sections for years. Witness testimony in cases like this can come from people who were never positioned as central figures. It can come from extended family members who observed specific patterns of behavior over time. It can come from former employees, people whose professional role gave them physical access to private spaces, to private conversations, to private moments that a carefully managed public image was specifically designed to hide. It can come from spiritual advisors, from medical professionals, from counselors who were consulted during moments of family crisis when the walls were down and the cameras were off. Each of those categories carries a different kind of evidentiary weight. Each of those categories tells a different kind of story. What I want to do right now is walk you through the full witness landscape around the Duggar family, specifically around Joseph and Kendra's world, so that when the theory drops, you already have the map in your head and you understand exactly why this particular witness changes everything. Let's start with the obvious candidates, because I want to address them directly before we go further. And I want to be clear. I am going to explain why the most obvious options are also the most limited options, because understanding what a witness cannot offer is just as important as understanding what they can. The Duggar siblings are the first place everyone looks, and here is the reality. The siblings grew up inside the same belief system, the same controlled environment, the same framework that shaped Joseph's entire worldview. That shared context is both their power and their limitation. Testimony from within that inner circle is complicated by family loyalty, by shared religious convictions, by the fact that any sibling who speaks against another is navigating an incredibly high personal cost. That does not mean it is impossible. It means it is complicated in ways that defense attorneys are very good at exploiting. Former TLC production staff are the second category everyone immediately jumps to. And yes, anyone who spent significant time on set with the Duggar family observed things. They saw the difference between what was happening in front of the camera and what happened the moment the camera stopped rolling. But here is the issue. Production staff were there for the family brand. They were there for the Duggar public image, which means their observations are filtered through that specific lens. What they saw was carefully managed behavior in a semi-public environment. What we are looking for is what actually matters in a case like this, is what happened in the spaces that even production never accessed. Family friends, church community members, the extended network of people who have orbited the Duggar world for years. These individuals have credibility, they have proximity, but their testimony is limited by selective access. They saw what the family chose to show them. They were guests in a world that was always performing. So I want you to hold all of that in your mind, because I have just cleared the field for a reason. Every obvious candidate has a ceiling, a limit on what they can credibly offer. And the most powerful witness in a case like this is not the person with the highest profile. It is the person with the deepest access. Now I want to build a profile for you. And I am going to do this without naming anyone yet, because the profile is the point. The profile is what I need you to sit with, because when I land the theory, I want you to feel it click into place, rather than just hear me say it. Imagine a person who is physically present across multiple years, not occasionally present, not present for the big moments that everyone remembers, present in the ordinary moments, the unremarkable Tuesdays, the difficult seasons, the transitions between one version of the family's public story and the next. A person whose professional role or personal function gave them legitimate, repeated, unquestioned access to spaces that cameras never reached. A person who, by the nature of their role, was trusted implicitly because in order to do their job, they had to be. And a person whose loyalty to the Duggar world is not a given. A person who exists within the orbit of this story, but whose allegiance was never purchased by the family brand, by the television income, by the institutional identity that kept so many people silent for so long. That person exists. That person observed things. And that person may not have fully understood, in the moment, what they were observing. That memory is a strange and precise instrument. When the right questions are asked, under oath, in the right setting, memory becomes testimony. Now here is where we get to Kendra specifically, and this is the part of this theory that hit me the hardest when I started putting it together. Kendra Caldwell entered the Duggar world when she was very young. She married Joseph in 2017. She was 19 years old. And from that moment, her life became a function of a system of belief, of family structure, of public image management, of religious framework that was not designed to center her individual experience. What she felt, what she endured, what she witnessed in the private interior of that marriage was witnessed largely by her alone. Or so she may have believed. Think about the psychological weight of that. Think about what it means to move through years of your life carrying experiences that you believe are entirely invisible. No witness, no record. No one could stand in a room and say, "I saw this. I was there. I can confirm what happened." The isolation of that is not just emotional, it is strategic. A person who believes they have no witness has very little hope of being believed. And in systems like the one the Duggar family operated within, that isolation is not accidental. But here's the thing about life, and this is what I keep coming back to. The system is never as airtight as it believes itself to be. There are always gaps. There are always moments where someone who was not supposed to see saw anyway. Someone who is not supposed to remember, remembered. Someone who is not supposed to be asked, eventually gets asked. Kendra may have spent years believing she was entirely alone in her experience. But what if she was not? What if, without ever knowing it, she had a witness the entire time? Not a witness she chose, not a witness she confided in, not a witness who was brought in intentionally. A witness that the system itself accidentally created by virtue of needing people around to keep the machine running. That is the theory. And now I am going to give it to you directly. The most powerful potential witness in the broader Duggar legal and personal narrative is not coming from the family inner circle. It is not coming from the television production world. It is coming from the professional support ecosystem that surrounded the family specifically. The individuals whose roles required them to be present during some of the most private and vulnerable moments in Kendra's experience as a wife and mother. Kendra experienced multiple pregnancies, complicated ones. She was in a medical environment. She was in spaces where the management of image breaks down because the body does not perform on command. Medical professionals who treated Kendra over the course of her pregnancies observed her in her most unguarded state. They asked questions that the Duggar PR apparatus could not script answers to. They were trained to notice behavioral indicators, patterns of stress, things that do not match what a patient says versus what a patient's body communicates. Beyond the medical world, consider the counseling landscape. In moments of family crisis, in moments where the Duggar institutional framework was under strain, outside voices were sometimes consulted. Counselors, advisors, people who were brought in specifically because the family needed help they could not generate internally. Those conversations happened in rooms without cameras. Those conversations happened at moments of genuine vulnerability. And those individuals, depending on the nature of what was shared, may carry information that goes far beyond what anyone in the Duggar public world has ever acknowledged. Here's the framing I want you to take into the second half of this video. The surprise witness is not someone Kendra chose. The surprise witness is someone the system accidentally created. And the most terrifying thing about that from a legal strategy perspective is that you cannot prepare for a witness you did not know existed. The witness does not even necessarily have to take the stand for the dynamic to shift. The moment an opposing legal team files an amended witness list with a name that the defense did not expect, the entire psychological architecture of the case changes. Suddenly, the defense does not know what they know. Suddenly, the certainty that the narrative was controlled becomes a question mark. And in legal proceedings, a question mark in the wrong place is more powerful than 100 confirmed facts. Let me pick up exactly where I left off. We established that the most powerful witness in a case like this is not the most obvious one. We established that the witness Kendra may not have known she had was someone created by the system itself. Someone whose professional proximity gave them access that no camera, no sibling, no friend ever had. And we established that the psychological power of a surprise witness is not limited to what they say on the stand. The power begins the moment the other side realizes they exist. Now I want to go deeper, because understanding the theory is one thing. Understanding what it would actually mean in a courtroom, in a legal strategy session, in the quiet back and forth that happens between attorneys before any of it becomes public, is an entirely different level of comprehension. And I think this audience is ready for it. Let's talk about what happens inside a legal team when a surprise witness enters the picture. And I want you to picture this as concretely as possible, because this is not abstract legal theory. This is human psychology operating under enormous pressure. Joseph's legal team, whichever attorneys are advising him in whatever proceedings are relevant to his situation, has spent considerable time building a picture of what the other side knows. That is a fundamental part of legal strategy. You map the opposing team's information. You identify their strongest arguments. You build your defenses around the evidence you can anticipate. You prepare your client for the questions that are coming. And you do all of that based on a specific assumption, that you know the landscape, that there are no significant unknowns, that the witness list, the evidence inventory, the narrative architecture of the other side, you have accounted for all of it. Now imagine that assumption is wrong. Imagine that 14 days before a critical proceeding, an amended witness list arrives. And on that list is a name that nobody on Joseph's legal team was prepared for. Not because the name is shocking in isolation, but because the role that person played, the access they had, the things they observed, suddenly, the entire picture of what the other side knows becomes uncertain. And legal teams do not handle uncertainty well. Uncertainty means recalculation. Uncertainty means going back to your client and asking questions that you thought you had already asked and answered. Uncertainty means acknowledging privately, in a conference room, behind closed doors, that you may have been operating with an incomplete map. That moment of recalculation is where cases change, not always in the courtroom, not always in testimony that the public ever hears. Sometimes, and this is what I think most people fundamentally misunderstand about how high-profile family cases actually resolve, sometimes the case changes in a settlement conversation that happens because one side suddenly understands that they are not holding the position they thought they were holding. A surprise witness does not just testify. A surprise witness restructures the negotiating table. And the side that understood that a witness existed, that prepared around it, that deployed it strategically, that side walks into every conversation afterward with a leverage advantage that is almost impossible to overstate. Now, I want to bring this back to Kendra directly, because this is not just a legal theory exercise. This is about a young woman who entered a marriage at 19 years old, inside one of the most controlled and surveilled family environments in American television history, and who has been largely voiceless in the public narrative for years. And I want to say something about that directly before we go any further. The Duggar system, the media ecosystem, the religious framework, the family brand machinery was extraordinarily effective at one specific thing: making the women inside it invisible as individuals. You saw them. You watched them every week. You knew their names and their children's names and their home decor choices. But you did not know them. You were never meant to. The visibility was a form of concealment. The more you thought you were seeing, the less you were actually allowed to observe. Kendra Caldwell grew up in a household that fed directly into that same framework. She was raised within a belief system that prepared her for exactly the kind of life she stepped into, which means that the transition from her childhood home into the Duggar family was not a transition from freedom into constraint. It was a transition from one form of constraint into another. And within that, the idea of a witness, of someone who could see what was actually happening rather than what was being performed, would have felt like an impossibility, like something that simply did not exist in the world she occupied. But here's what I keep returning to, and I need you to think about this carefully. Controlled systems require infrastructure. They require people. They require hands and voices and professional expertise that the family cannot generate entirely from within itself. And every single person who is brought into that infrastructure to serve a functional medical, psychological, logistical professional is a potential observer. Not a spy, not an infiltrator, just a human being who is present, who is paying attention in the way that professionals are trained to pay attention, and who remembers what they saw. Kendra had pregnancies that were medically complicated. That is documented. That is not speculation. Complicated pregnancies mean extended medical relationships. They mean repeated appointments. They mean conversations in clinical settings where the normal performance of a managed public image is interrupted by the reality of a human body under stress. They mean medical professionals who are specifically trained to ask the questions that get underneath the surface because their job requires them to have accurate information, not curated information. I am not going to tell you what I believe any specific medical professional saw or heard. I am not in a position to know that, and I would never speculate about specific private conversations in a medical context. What I am telling you is this: that ecosystem of professional access is where the surprise witness lives, in the intersection of professional obligation and private access, in the space where the Duggar machine needed outside help and had to, by necessity, lower its walls. And there is one more category I want to explore before we get to the courtroom scenario, because I think this is the one that people are sleeping on entirely. Faith communities, specifically pastoral counseling, specifically the kind of spiritual advisory conversations that happen when a marriage is under strain, and the couple, or one member of the couple, reaches outside the immediate family circle for guidance. In intensely religious communities, the pastor or spiritual advisor occupies a role that is simultaneously deeply trusted and deeply complicated. They are brought into moments of genuine crisis. They are told things that are not told to anyone else. They operate under a framework of spiritual confidentiality that functions differently from legal privilege in important ways. Now, I am not suggesting that any pastoral counselor would violate the trust of a counseling relationship. That is not the point. The point is that the existence of those conversations, the fact that they happened, the fact that there was a moment of reaching out, a moment of acknowledging that something was wrong, is itself a form of evidence. Because it tells us that there was something that needed to be addressed, something that could not be handled entirely within the Duggar system's own framework. And the person who has reached out to the counselor, the pastor, the spiritual advisor exists. They remember. And depending on how those conversations are characterized, depending on what was shared and what was sought, their potential testimony, even their potential existence on a witness list, carries extraordinary weight. Now I want to take you into the courtroom. I want you to see this. I want it to be specific and real in your imagination, because I think the abstract version of this theory does not fully land until you picture the human moment at the center of it. It is a proceeding, the kind that happens behind closed doors, with limited public access, with attorneys and a judge and the people whose lives are being decided in real time by the words spoken in that room. Kendra's attorney has been methodical. I have been patient, has built a case layer by layer, piece by piece, in exactly the kind of deliberate sequencing that tells the other side, we are not improvising. We have been working. We have been building this longer than you know. And then, at a moment carefully chosen for maximum strategic effect, the filing arrives. An amended witness list, 14 days prior to the relevant proceeding, as required. Joseph's attorney opens the document, scans the names, and stops. There is a name on this list that was not anticipated. Not a family member, not a former colleague from the television world, someone from the professional ecosystem, someone whose role gave them access that no one thought to account for, someone who was in rooms that were supposed to be private, someone who asked questions that were supposed to stay unanswered. Joseph's attorney picks up the phone. The conversation that follows is not calm, because the question being asked, the only question that matters in that moment is, what does this person know? And the answer, honestly, is, we are not certain. We thought we knew the boundaries of what could be known. We were wrong about the boundaries. We need to recalibrate everything. That recalibration is the moment the case turns. Not a dramatic courtroom revelation with gasps from the gallery. A phone call, a document, a name on a list, and the quiet, sickening realization that the map you have been navigating by was missing a significant piece of territory. The day of the proceeding arrives. Kendra's attorney stands, states for the record that the final witness for the proceedings is ready to be called. Joseph's attorney objects not on substantive grounds, because the filing was procedurally correct, because the 14-day requirement was met, but as a performance of disruption, a way of buying seconds to think. The objection is overruled. The door opens. Joseph turns to look. Not because he wants to, because he cannot help himself, because the body responds to recognition before the mind has time to construct a defense. And his expression in that fraction of a second before the professional mask reasserts itself tells every person in that room everything they need to know. He knows this person. He never thought they would be here. The witness takes the seat, folds their hands, look directly at the attorney who called them. And when the judge asks them to state their name and their relationship to the parties for the record, they take one breath. The kind of breath a person takes when they have been carrying something for a long time, and they are finally being asked to put it down, and they begin to speak. I cannot tell you what they say. I genuinely cannot, because I do not know. This is a theory. This is my reading of the landscape, my reading of the structural vulnerabilities in a system that believed itself to be impenetrable. But I can tell you this, whatever that witness says, the fact that they are there at all has already done the work. The uncertainty is already inside the defense. The question mark is already sitting at the table. And from that point forward, nothing in this case is what it was before that door opened. Here's what I believe about Kendra Caldwell. I believe she is a young woman who has operated inside a system that was specifically designed to make her invisible, to make her doubt the weight of her own experience, to make her feel that what happened in the private interior of her marriage was witnessed by no one and could therefore be denied by anyone. I believe that the isolation of that experience has been real and has been heavy. And I believe, this is my theory, I want to be clear, this is what I am building. I believe that somewhere in the professional ecosystem that surrounded her life, someone was paying attention. Someone was present. Someone is out there with the capacity to say, I was there, I saw it, I remember. And when that person is asked, under oath, in a room where the normal performance stops working, the story that has been carefully managed for years is going to crack. Not dramatically, not with music swelling behind it, with the quiet, devastating weight of a human being telling the truth in a room that is legally required to hear it. Now I need you to help me with something, because this is where this channel becomes more than just a place where I talk and you listen. This is where the community becomes part of the investigation. I have given you the profile. I have given you the framework. I have given you the theory. Now I want to know what you think. Based on everything you know about the Duggar world, about Joseph and Kendra's specific circumstances, about the professional ecosystem around their lives, about the infrastructure that the Duggar machine required to keep running, who do you think the surprise witness is? What category? What role? What kind of access? Give me your most detailed, most reasoned theory in the comments below. I am not looking for the most dramatic answer. I am looking for the most logical one, the most structurally sound one, the theory that holds up when you apply the framework I have built in this video. The most detailed, most reasoned comment gets pinned. I mean that. I read every single comment on this channel, and the analyses this community produces consistently go deeper than anything I could generate alone. So bring your best thinking. Pin-worthy or not, I want to see it. Here's what I know for certain. The Duggar story is not finished. The legal chapter that surrounds Joseph specifically is not a closed book with a clean ending. There are proceedings, there are filings, there are conversations happening in rooms that the public does not have access to yet. And somewhere in that landscape, in the paperwork, in the witness lists, in the amended filings and procedural moves that happen below the surface, there is a name that is going to matter enormously when it finally becomes visible. When that name surfaces, and I believe it will, everything that has felt confusing and inconsistent about this case is going to suddenly make sense. The pattern is going to become legible. And the people who understood the theory before the name became public are going to be the people who can read the significance of it immediately, without needing it explained. I want you to be one of those people. Subscribe to this channel right now if you are not already subscribed. Hit the bell for every notification, because when this story moves, and it will move, I am going to be covering it in real time, with the depth and the context that you will not find anywhere else. Hit the like button on this video, not as a favor to me, but because it tells YouTube that this kind of careful, layered analysis is what people actually want to watch. And the more this video reaches, the more people are paying attention to this story, the harder it becomes for the narrative to be quietly managed from the inside. The surprise witness is out there. They exist. They remember. And somewhere, right now, a conversation is happening in a room where their testimony is being considered, weighed, measured, positioned. The other side is either aware of them or they are not. And the difference between those two possibilities is the difference between a case that proceeds as expected and a case that turns in a direction nobody saw coming. I will be here when it turns. I will be here with the context, with the analysis, with the theory that if I am right, is going to have this community saying, "We understood this before anyone else did. We were watching. We were paying attention." Drop your witness theory below. Subscribe, like this video, and stay close, because the Duggar story is about to enter its most significant chapter yet. And the witness nobody saw coming, they are already on their way through the door.